Okay, let's go. Yeah, everything else good. Sound good. Okay. Morning, daughter. How you doing? How are you doing? Okay. Requirements gathering. Nice. Putting a lot of work into that. It's I think that'll be quite rewarding. The thing I find about those sorts of things is it's really good to try and get to use it with other people, and that's always a challenge. You know, how do you kind of firm up the skill set? And you only firm that by doing it, and then if you're doing it on your own, it is a challenge. Super scriptive, yeah. But I think the exercise is worthwhile because it gives you the chance to get some thoughts and opinions on it, and if you can get to actually do it with other people, that would be really effective. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm gonna read up on it and a little bit more, and maybe we can try the exercise drink water, but I don't think that's going to give you what you need there to really firm up the solid ideas. I think the way to approach it might be give a dev a problem and a tool event storming to solve it. Yeah. Maybe. I can definitely see how it would help, because it's, I mean, it's not really that far from what I'm trying to do with this, right? Because it's trying to figure out what do you actually need. And that's the problem. That's the challenge we all have, right? It's not just like you can say, hey, I want a screen and I want it to add some information. And you go off and work on that story. And it's like, oh, but does it do this? Does it do this? Oh, but now we need this as well, right? That sort of approach to software is what leads to creep, what leads to bugs, what leads to, unmaintainable code, because we're just kind of dumping more things in. And and oftentimes we're doing it in reaction to someone not understanding what they wanted in the first place. That is designed to try and bring those requirements out. So it very much is what I'm trying to do, or what I'm trying to provide the tooling for, I suppose, is capturing those as actual requirements without deciding that they live in stories. So I'm disconnecting the capturing of the information from the usage as actual work, which is what the event storming will produce. The event storming will produce a massive, essentially, wish list, and then you review that wish list later. So maybe I'm providing the tool to capture those things, but they aim in the same direction of trying to figure out what the users actually want. Yeah. So today we're going to work on this. We're going to work on adding a new requirement. I'm going to do it in here for now. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's part of this. I think the direction of event storming and what I'm trying to build in the software aspect here, they're not deliberately aligned, but they do align in their goal of trying to identify what users actually want. I mean, event storming comes from brainstorming, right? It comes from the idea of kind of throwing things out there and trying to identify, and trying by verbalizing or writing them down, making you think about, oh, do we actually need that? Oh, maybe we need this. Oh, how do we tell that? And it's that explorative visual thing that helps. I think you do event storming, figure out the passenger menu for the cab company, and then use this to plan different items for that screen. But you'd have the guidance on the requirements and on that information gathering, right? That's kind of where I'm trying to, by introducing this middle step to the stack, I suppose. I'm trying to get these things and trying to provide a tool that is not going to make them fit it neatly in a story that a developer goes and works on. Mm-hmm. Right. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna put an add new. I'm gonna put a pop up in. I think a dialogue works to capture this. I don't think an inline form is effective here. This is actually currently auto saving, so if I click on this one, it'll demonstrate it better. Make progress on adding requirements. should be able to I still think there's a detail screen at some point. Then let's make that 13. So now that moves that down there. And no save button. Interesting. I had one already. I think these are a bit flipped. These are H5s, program H4s. Still not really sure about that. So the problem with this I have right this second is these are meant to be quite descriptive, right? So this is going to create a large section, a large wall of text if I'm not careful. So what I might end up doing is putting an expander on there and saying see more and having it pop down so that the requirements don't automatically flow down the screen, kind of hide them behind something. I did some work yesterday on the requirements. I think this might not be perfect because the requirements right now is a component that I add in the requirements. I think I might actually just have to set the planning item detail on it. But yesterday, sorry, I just heard something. I did some work on loading the detail. So the load detail store actually created a promise so that I could resolve it once I've fetched the data. I can patch that data in, because what I was seeing is a disconnect where I'd patched the data, but I patched it later, which created a problem. Why do you not like that? Refactor this code to not nest functions more than 4 levels deep. That's impossible. How do I do that? Sorry, I don't understand. Sorry, I think you do. Event storming the output is we need a passage screen, we need a dispatcher screen. It's probably not the items on the screen, although it might tell you the bare minimum of items needed on the screen. Yeah. Again, I think the problem we have as developers is we are not good at this component, right? This figuring out. We're good at being told, hey, I need to do this, and going off and writing code. What we need to do is be better at pulling out of people what they actually want and what they envision as such, which is why mock-ups are often helpful, because they've kind of had their vision validated with the mock-ups, or they've got the right idea. And you can use a mock-up to point to and say, what happens when I click that button? What happens when this screen shows? How does that behave, etc. And it's about trying to figure out all the unknowns that come with, I want a screen. Great. What does that screen look like? Well, I want it to allow me to add things. Okay, where do we put the buttons? Where do we do this? There's all these things that go into it that we need to kind of identify. And there's things that happen. There's oh, I need to email the client when I do this action, or I need to do this when this happens, and we got to trying to get to those things. That's what event storming is built to do. To discover the things that should happen, the beyond just the visual. And then again, this tool is intended to kind of allow them to capture that in, or capture what they expect it to behave as, and then be able to discuss with developers without actually creating actual tracked work. So from a management perspective, you know the difference between what is not been done and what has not been created. So they all flow together. So I'm thinking what I use is why do you keep going into light mode? It defaults. It doesn't. The prime NG site does not pull the system settings. So we have a dialogue. What's a dynamic dialogue? Oh, that's so I can invoke it whenever I want. Offer component exists. That's the old jQuery thing. Template. Header and footer templates. Top. Right. Not sure how I feel about dialogues being off the center of the screen. Maximizable, long content, without modal, responsive. That's the dialogue can be adjusted per screen. Headless. Ooh. So this is just the dialogue with the behavior, and everything inside of it is templated. Otherwise, we do footer, header. Okay, so I think we do a dialogue. The challenge is, so we have planning item detail. Planning item detail has the app requirements as a panel, a tab panel. App requirements does not have enough information to add a requirement, does it? So what does add requirement require? Items, right? Add requirement. So we have a planning item identifier and a requirement. Again, I don't know enough about TypeScript, about the structure, to be able to effectively refactor this. That's going to be a challenge. Okay, so I think two options. I pass it the identifier and the requirements, or I pass it the planning item and leave it to itself. It doesn't really make a big difference. Here I have requirements, and then so the difference is we do import planning item then we need to do private store equals inject buying item store. That needs to not be standalone. Does this have responsibility? I'm questioning whether this requirements component should have kind of made sense because the layout does provide for the button in there, so it does kind of make sense, and it's okay for this to call it. It is adding a requirement after all. Just questioning the item. So item.requirements. Realistically, we're saying item.requirements there. So because there is a potential for those not to be loaded. So that means here we say item equals item. I don't want to make it standalone. It's part of the module for planning. So I want to make it part of the planning module. Yeah. So it goes there as a component. It's a declared component of the module. That's the... And this got a bit messy with the form control because I've basically put the update on blur. That may change. One of the things I might actually experiment there with is, and one line kind of showed me Azure DevOps kind of allows you to enter some data there, navigate to something else, come back, and it's still there, but it's not saved. So they still have save buttons. I'm not sure I want to try and experiment with putting store into kind of a dirty state. That might be a challenge for another day. So, by the way, this should behave the same now. Object is possible and defined. If item balance 330, it means here, right? If I get there, I've got the item. So there's our requirement still. So we've still got the behavior there. Now, I'm going to pull this off to the side so that I don't have to keep flashing back and forth for the documentation. So I want to actually See if that works. Let's add requirement, but yeah, it did work. Okay. So that will have added that component to here, yeah. That's what I wanted, and it's wrong. This add requirement. Nice refactoring. Okay. So the challenge there is I need an input. No, it's not a planning item. It's it will be set, and then the reason I'm doing that is because now this doesn't need to be in here, right? So I'm disconnecting those pieces. Can you look at this? Yeah, I can. Essentially made what would be the requirement given to the developer. So you see event storming as a non-collaborative? You think event storming should happen without the developer? So I think event storming is definitely not a macro level, a story level, or task, whichever way you put it, level item. But as a collaboration, I think it definitely works. I mean, in this instance, you're saying, hey, here's the requirements, right? Here's a dispatcher menu, and well, design the following UI and any forgotten requirements for the system. And any forgotten requirements. I think I know what you mean, but can you clarify what you mean by that one? Do you get stories like that? So if I see that as that is worded by a PM, I will push the story back extremely quickly, because it's basically, what do you think we're missing, right? That's just well, I told you to fill it in, right? That's a very dangerous thing to see from a PM, because basically anything that didn't get caught by the event storming, etc., and you fill in, that is their catch-all for, well, I told you to fill it. I told you to get that done, and that's where you lose time, because you don't know what you don't know until you hit that problem. So that's why the agility works, where we can say, okay, well, we've hit a roadblock. What do we do? Do we adapt? Do we push this story out? Do we carry on and document the actual missing requirements? But if a PM puts that into a story, that means they're just they're giving themselves a back door of, well, I told them to fill anything in. And when we're saying, oh, why wasn't this done in the 2 days you promised it in? The forgotten requirements are big picture event storm. Driver management, add new cab driver, customer interaction. How does the dispatch system know that the fare was completed or if it was cancelled? There must be some interaction between the cabbie and the dispatch that is missing here. Right. But it's best to know that before you plan the story, because that very much can dictate design. That could dictate the amount of work. So if you point this and you don't have those questions answered, and then all of a sudden you come up with some super complicated system, you've agreed to do it in 3 points. It might now be 8 points or 20 points or whatever worth of work to implement this, but you've agreed on 3 points and you've taken 3 points. So now that story that you thought you'd get done in 2 days now takes 2 weeks, and you've lost it. That's where story pointing falls down. It's why event storming as an idea is a really good, powerful concept, because it allows you to try and figure this out, which is why I'm saying it's collaborative, because then at least if the collaboration's happened, you've kind of ironed out some of those questions. Yes, this is a technical concern, but it is something you should answer before you start a story. Is there an event? Driver request, ride assigned. So dispatcher, driver. So the driver request sent and they accept cab fare. Yeah, the technology you don't need to work out, but you do need to have an answer before you take the story. So you can effectively point it. Like, to me, this is kind of eventing, right? From a technological perspective, I'm saying, hey, a dispatch is literally a message. It's a fare pickup event, and the driver accepts the fare pickup event, deals with that, and then and acknowledges that. Once it acknowledged, the fare is seen as, yeah. So the flow through is reasonable, but the technology and stuff, yeah. Like, it's a very event-driven system, right? It's a responsive system because, again, well, you got some CRUD up here. A request comes in, so it's a posted request. The dispatcher is the one that receives that request. That request is then stored, and then an event is posted to say, hey, driver. Now, is that to a specific driver? Have we already determined the driver? Or is that a general request? Is that targeted somewhere? I mean, I know that it's not within the realm of this, but it's more, what does that decision look like? Is it a broadcast, or is it oh, I know which driver I'm sending this to? What if 2 drivers accept it at once? right? Race conditions, those sorts of things. Those are the technical implementations, but it's kind of, does it play into the eventing? And that's why, from a collaborative standpoint, this is why this is useful, because you could actually have the developers asking these questions because they see those technical limitations, right? So they can ask more pointed questions. If they're not part of this and the PM goes off and designs it in a bubble and then passes it on, you've just wasted time because some of these things could have been worked out. You do the event storming to arrive on this, right, though. And the team is the development plus the PMs. But yeah, what there's things like, what happens if you get a race? What happens if driver A accepts it and driver B accepts it? Do you have an event to say, no, the ride's already been accepted, sorry? Do you have an event to say, ride confirmed? Because again, the driver request is, so the driver publishes a confirmed message. The ride dispatch takes it and says, oh, actually, well, it's not just fair completed, is it? It's fair accepted as well. So the driver has to publish availability, right? So is this broadcast to all available drivers? Is this broadcast to, like, if it's something like ride sharing, right? To, whatever, they're going to say, okay, well, find me all drivers within a radius and ping all them. If it's a taxi, taxis could be going to fares, they could be coming from fares, so you need to know where they're heading, and if they're heading within the area of pickup and they're going to be there sooner, maybe you ping them. Maybe you ping all drivers within a radius. There's all sorts of rules that can go into that depending on your organization. So you keep track of availability as well as who's assigned to what ride. Ride execution, customer picked up. Does dispatch need to know about that? But again, it's time consuming. As long as it's effective and you actually whittle down those things, that time consumption up front saves you so much down the line, because you've actually got a clearer vision of what the system should be. You've answered some questions, you've identified challenges, you know what those challenges are ahead of time, and even if you don't have an answer right now, you can go off and think about it because you've thought about it, right? Hey, Hannah's Panda, how you doing? Dad of Dev. How's things? So that time spent working out some of this stuff and discussing some of this stuff is very valuable ahead of time, because if you meet one of those problems, let's say you start development and 2 or 3 sprints in, you are presented with, oh, we now need to publish the request, and someone says, well, who do we publish the request to? And no one's thought about that already, then you've got a challenge. T-bone steak. Nice. Very fancy. How was that? But yeah, Dalton, the point is that I really believe that things like event storming, done correctly and effectively, can be really useful tools. And I love that you're doing this, because it is actually allowing me to think through this sort of stuff as well. Maybe I should go through this effort. But it is so useful if done correctly to cutting down that later drag, that later pause. Because again, if you hit this problem 2 or 3 sprints in, it might not be terrible. No worries, Hannah Spanner. Thank you very much for hanging out. I should refer to you as Panda or. But yeah, thank you for the look. Yeah, so you catch a lot up front by identifying these. And again, that discussion with the developers, yeah, the developers are going to often have a technical discussion. They might try to start problem solving, but that's not what they're there to do. They're there to identify challenges and raise questions based upon roughly what they know they would be doing, right? So again, this is dispatch. It actually fits nicely in the eventing world, right? Because you are dispatching an event. Or are you dispatching a command? That is a difference there, right? You're either sending a command or you're dispatching an event, because an event would be a broadcast to all the drivers. A command would be sent to a specific driver. It makes a big difference. And how you've configured the system so far might not align. So you might have a lot of engineering to do when you get to this point. Whereas if you know this is coming later and you know you've identified these things ahead of time, you can actually say, okay, we need 2 or 3 sprints to sit down and do some prototyping and some architecture stuff to build things out. Again, relaying that, hey, we have time to do this now because we know what's expected of us. We know what we're trying to achieve. We've given an estimation of time needed, and the business can say, okay, well, yeah, you go off and do that for 2 to 3 sprints, but then the expectation, and the developers will go with that expectation, is that you then accelerate into development and knock out some of these stories relatively quick because you've already got the architecture in place. So that visibility, that effort of understanding the architecture, building the components necessary based upon the things you know you need to do after that long discussion, it all starts to accelerate everything else rather than making it up as you go along or struggling through those things. So yeah, there's great value in knowing up front. I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if it'll let me. New file. Index.ts. Export star from. Okay. Which is up. Okay. Okay, so we've got an add requirement. So we're going to put in here e-dialog. I did also update over the weekend. I updated to Angular 18, so I'm on the latest version of Angular. Modal is true for this one because it's wow, typing is failing me today. Style equals style class equals with 1/3. That is that requirement. Interesting. But you want to do that for me? Does not have a due date. That's interesting that it thinks that's the case. And that it cut off just halfway through a control. That's very interesting. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Okay. So we're gonna have a form control. So public form group equals new form group. Public title new form control string value is not required. No. Oh, it's not that. It's that's that. Oh, sorry. So, public intended. Yep. And then we have controls is title, this dot title, and this. So that should at least give me a form. Why don't you like that? Oh, I've got a missing div. And I called it form group, so it's quiet in here today. Switching between game dev and app dev is definitely not healthy. Let's remove that for right this second. There's a challenge in the design there, in the layout. So in add requirements here, we're going to do add requirement. Is that what I called it? Identifier. No. So I'm missing it. I must have removed it. Add requirement. Okay, I should. Add requirement. Oh. That's because that. Identifier equals items ID. That's fine. And then public show visible boolean equals false. there, and then over here, do visible. Let's see if we get somewhere. Make progress on requirements, add new. Yeah, you kind of need to do something like that, don't you? So, add add, and then click equals add dot show. So I'm not using the back end. I can wire that up just fine. I'm not going to remove that linting because I think it is very useful. Requirements component 1046. Show dialog. Hello, TS, show dialog, vista visible. Okay, that's all I'm doing. Add dot show. Model is true, visible. Interesting. Why aren't you working? I like that it's picked up my style of laying out the controls. That's definitely helpful. Is it erroring? No, it's not erroring. Off to work. Delta, thank you very much. I always love having the conversations in the morning. It's really, I love this stuff. So, if you have the tabs open, Copilot can read the surrounding code and give you suggestions from that. Nice. Yeah, that would make sense. I have the other forms open, but nice. Huh. I don't know if I do have those. No, I don't have. I don't happen to have those tabs open. But I've written enough of this that I assume that it's learned something about how I write. Yeah. Nice. It did cut off, so it does feel like it was a snippet. Take care. Thank you as always. I'll see you again. Stranhorn, good morning. How are you doing? Well, it's that time of the day where I get the sun in my face. How's things? Morning, Trap. How are you doing? You know, if I click it a million times, it might just appear. Let's figure out if it's actually calling my method. I mean, some object is possibly undefined. Line 10. No. It's not possibly undefined because if item and item. Wow. I am failing to use a keyboard today. Good, almost out of work. Seem to be spelunking for more work from the backlog. Wow. There we go. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. So there must have been an error being thrown in the Angular code in the back. That's what I should have gone. What I should have done there is I should have gone over to here. No. Where's the debugger tab? Where's the run code? Oh, here. Oh, they've now got a run separate to debug. Okay. But yeah, this was erroring, so the actual code wasn't compiling, so that code was never applied. That always, so coming back onto your comment, Mr. Arnold, that always worries me when work isn't, when you're jumping into the backlog, because it means that depends if that work is well defined in the backlog, I suppose, and who's defining the backlog. Because jumping into the backlog in a sprint means that you underestimated how much work you could achieve. Your velocity is higher. It's a good thing to happen once in a while. Nice. So you got plenty of well-defined work. I've always struggled to get the well-defined work part. So the PMs are kind of on the verge of barely having enough stories to fill out a sprint, and then they don't step on the gas and try to get the backlog tighter. They just wait until the next planning meeting, and then we end up with challenges like that. So yeah. This is squiggled because it wants me to add an on-key press. I really wish I could just do that. That'd be nice. So if I press it or click it, that's what I do. But it wants on-key. It doesn't want on-key press. It's not an event. On-key press, on-key down, on-key up. They're not events. Sorry about that. Yeah, it does not happen much. I overestimated the work to update some logic. It was mostly estimate the dev portion of the work. It's QA work that needed to be done the mostly. Okay. QA. Add an on-key press, on-key down, on-key up attribute. So technically my work's not done. Because it's got to go into QA. It may come back to you. Okay, so let's do... So the challenge with this is... Will this let me do it? Don't think this is going to work. P template equals footer. That's the second time you've done that. That's the second time. Forms, add planning item. I'll probably move these into components. That's what I want my buttons to look like. Add requirement. There's the buttons. Let's just remove that for the second. Actually, that can be hide. That's pretty obvious. And then this is that. So let's have a look and see if that works. I'm hoping it'll let me put those buttons in that dialog. Oh. No. But that might not be my fault necessarily. Let's remove that debugger so we don't have that sat there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out, again, I'm trying to figure out the workflow, right? So I've got the form working. The form now is auto saves, so it will make adjustments. So if I go to simple test, we'll say adding a dialog for adding requirements. So you can see it automatically saved and updated there. We need to add a dialog that will allow us to capture requirements, and that'll be due on the 12th, which is now counting as past due. Interesting. So glad I tested. So those buttons don't show here. Let's go to PrimeNG. Let's look at templates. P-template footer. Okay, so that should work. So ng template p-template equals footer is meant to work. P button. Not quite sure what the difference is, but we'll find out. Severity secondary. So that's different ways of doing it. So I can do button, P button. So I must have seen an example do it that way at some point. So that's interesting that they've got different ways. I know it's the way that Angular is kind of working. In this one we can just do label equals cancel. We don't need to have the actual text in there. And same here. We can just do label equals v8. That cleans those up a little bit, right? So I'm wondering if the template is being ignored because it's inside my form. So let's have a look. The challenge with that is if it is the case, then yeah. It's not liking rendering it as part of the form. So it's because it's part of a nested element, right? So well, this is always the I can still save it. We just do a click. click equals save. Okay, so this, now we need our store, so we need to public, actually we can do private on this one, private store equals inject planning item store. This dot store add requirement. This dot identifier, and then it requires a requirement, I think. I dislike that the navigation doesn't work for that. So this store, planning items right, add requirement takes a requirement, which is, that's coming down though. That's not coming up. So title and intended outcome is what I need. So in here, what I do is say, well, first, if this dot return for right a second. Hey Mojo, how you doing? How's things today? So then we have title. Yeah. Get away. As requirement. Dot then just dot hide. That's actually an important step, because if the dialog opens again, it'll do that. Driving to work, someone still listening. No worries. Appreciate you hanging out. Yeah, drive be a safe one. So we'll add the form, we'll hit the save. So the save, I can't do ng submit because the form is outside of the buttons due to the template. So now when we go back here and do this and add new, so we add a new requirement, and add requirements to the side panel will allow us to keep the workflow of updating the panel intact. Dialog should close on create when I click the create button. Dialog for adding a requirement should close. Did that. When I add a requirement, requirements should update. The requirements for the planning item just updated should update on the screen. So again, I'm expecting this to change here on this panel, right? Let's see if we actually got those planning items though, or those requirements. So I got no network failures in that parts of it. And if we go to requirements, they didn't make it there yet. Did they make it here? No. It did not. So, but this happens. So, did I even see? I don't see the API calls. So add requirement in the store. Should call add requirement on the planning service with the requirement, which should post to API planning items. So if we go over here and requirements post, we'll put a breakpoint here. That's what we should hit. So let's add new. Dialog closes when requirement is added. The requirements, add requirements dialog. Once the create button is clicked. We hit our breakpoint. So we're going to add requirement. And we're going to our command. So our command passed in our planning item identifier, who did it, and the intended outcome. And an equality contract, apparently. Oh. No. Planning item is not null. So associated projects is actually something I flagged when I was doing that work. So it's remembered the fact that I've got that debugging flag set. So I have a planning item. Create a new requirement. That requirement looks like this. Right. Okay. So let's just go to Kafka messaging out bots. Yep, we published an event. Actually, we published 2 events. That's not right. We're doubling up on events. That's not good. Interesting, but not good. So this means we're reading the entity twice and then pulling it. So if we're pulling the wrong version, for whatever reason, how do I deal with a dedupe? So add requirement. We'll do requirement added to planning item and planning item updated. I don't need to trigger an event on that anymore. Stop planning items from running. Planning items application, requirements, subscribers, requirement added to planning item. Yeah, I don't need to do this anymore because I published requirement updated, planning item updated. So I can delete that one. Planning items. That should turn to 8. So if anyone's new to the stream, if you are just joining and you are interested in knowing more about what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. You're more than welcome to. I'm happy to show you around the system. I'm not just trying to get stuff done. So feel free to ask if you're interested. So what I'm working on currently is when I add a planning item. So a planning item is essentially a document for a product manager to create to track what they believe is a feature. Now, PMs don't always align exactly to how a story should work out, a piece of work that a developer should work on. So what I'm introducing is this middle step of planning items, where a planning item gives the product manager or whoever the ability to create something and kind of evolve the requirements before it actually becomes defined work. It then gives the ability to sit down with developers and analyze that and say, yep, that is actually stuff we want to work on. We want these as stories, and you can pull those requirements into stories, or you will be able to, so that the workflow is more attuned to gathering of information rather than just, hey, I want this feature, go off and do it. So that's why I refer to it as kind of an agile project management tool. So what I'm working on is trying to get this requirement to capture, and then it should update here. So back then I did get the requirement was added, and now it's in here, but it wasn't added to the store. So now I have now I have them all. Right. So now I have all the requirements. So the problem there is actually not so I should have read these. I probably didn't have a lot of these before. I should have just read them over. The problem is actually probably one of when I go to write the requirements. No, I'm going to patch the state. So it's a signal store. It should have updated. Let's do this. Let's return a promise again. Because that worked really well for me last time. Planning items right, update planning item, add planning item, planning items query. So with this one, what I do is when I load detail, I capture that. So I don't need to do that necessarily. What I can do is that, and then I can do resolver there. What I do? Oh, resolver. Why don't you like that? Expected one argument, but got nothing. Resolver item, I suppose. So now on the add requirements, so add requirement now returns a promise. So I was having issues with the actual, getting my brain around the actual order of events when subscribing to things. So that subscription, I can't return the subscription. Here, it doesn't actually give me it immediately finishes. So with this, now it'll return the promise and I can wait on that truly. And then when it's finished, it'll resolve and this should happen. So now we should actually see, so what I should be able to do is actually this dot form group dot disable, right? So we should be able to disable the form while we process the event. Let's go to a new one. Add new. Requirement should show when added. But I am patching the state of the requirements. So the signal store, which is backing all this data, should actually get updated and update the UI. Because it's the signal store backing the data, not I'm not reloading it or having to own that piece. Requirements when added should immediately show in the list of requirements. Slide panel. So that's saving. Let's hit my breakpoint. And it's not loading there. even though it should have patched the state. Interesting. So the pause, the disable clearly worked. That worked really well because it just disabled the entire control set. But the requirement didn't load. So this patch state is going to say, "Oh, go find this entity with the identifier," because that's how I get them, and then push in. If item requirements is set, push in requirements, the new requirement, or make an array out of the requirements. When I load the details, so the promise is working as intended. Which is okay. But this is in the signal store, so this one doesn't really matter. That's just if I wanted to refer to that in some way, shape, or form, this could actually be. So this returns this add requirement here. Is this here? So it's a promise of planning item. There's our new requirement. So the Kafka store in the background is the Kafka events in the background are firing correctly. I should actually now check this one. I should only have one. Yeah, there you go. So there's only one event there because I don't need to fire planning item updated. Is fired by the as a separate event. So I'm not wholly sure what I want to look for here. Widgets. See, now it's loaded because I've refreshed the screen. What should I do is, or what I should do is, I have the planning item in here. purpose of the signal store is that should refresh. Let's have a look. Let's, I think, planning item. Debugger. Let's add a requirement. And grab one that's got no requirements. UI should look awesome. So when I save now, I hit my debugger, and the planning item that comes back to me has no requirements. Interesting. Even though I've patched the state of that item. But that's not really truthful. What I need is what do I need? Because let's see if it's the same behavior. So if I go here, let's go to one that hasn't got an item. I add a new planning item, a planning requirement. This should show when I navigate back and forth. The requirements patched in. It should show. Right. So if I do that and then go back, no, it's not doing that, is it? Now that's there because it's here. So, because this is loading on demand when I click back and forth, which probably now isn't right, because load detail, it will always Lindell, how you doing? Welcome in. I'm good. Making some progress. Just getting stuck on some tedious UI stuff. So what I'm trying to do right this second is I'm trying to add requirements down here. And I have the add working, but the update of the UI is not where I need it to be. I never find UI tedious, never. Suck at it. Yeah, it's I am absolutely a back-end developer. It's where I'm most happy. Pardon me. But probably because I don't enjoy it, so I never tried to get good at it. I like the rewarding when visuals work like this layout I kind of like right now. It's clean, it's providing information, it's nice and chunky and readable, but V plus design equals stick figures, bad stick figures, yeah. But it's is it functional? Is it usable? And I often get irritated with my own design, and I don't like it. And yeah. And now I'm looking at this, and having had One Lion demonstrate a more filled out Azure DevOps. I think Azure DevOps was designed by developers. I've got an Envato license, so I tend to borrow. I can do this here HTML and CSS without problem, just deciding what to do with stuff. Exactly. Yeah. And right now I'm in Angular single store mess, it seems. Yeah. I think it is very much designed by developers, that one. Yeah. So basically what I want to happen is when I add a new requirement, right, it should show here immediately, which the signal store should handle. But I've got to validate that I'm patching that state properly. But I think this was working before. Am I getting a different instance of the store? Oh, no. Am I getting... Oh, no. Constructor... What? How do you not know about the type? So, the signal stores, if I'm getting the wrong instance here, then these events are happening on a completely different instance, and that's a problem. So, yeah. Planning items store. What? Then again, sprint versus board versus bat, like another difference, but they all show the same thing in 3 different ways. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do with this tool, he says, as he's struggling to... Oh, that's what I'm missing, isn't it? I think that is the problem. I think I'm getting a new instance of the store, and that's not what I want to happen. But the way I'm trying to design this is very much based upon planning, right? This is aimed at gathering requirements and not focused on a sprint or anything like that, right? It's a view, so current, upcoming, etc. Interesting that got moved. I've got a rule problem somewhere. I thought I'd change one of these to the 12th. Did you reset and not update? Okay. So the aim is to focus on priority by review date. So this review date is a big component of what I'm building. And I'm keeping planning items separate from sprint work because planning items is the figure things out, figure out what stories are, and a single planning item could yield 3 or 4 stories across different projects, right? So that's why I allow associated projects, because that will... interesting that doesn't apply. That one, I'm finding bugs. That will allow them to kind of label it the way they think it should be labeled, but the developers can review and say, nope, that goes here, that goes there, that goes there. And that will allow them to kind of flex this a little bit. And then when you get to the actual sprint stuff, then that is again a review date ordered thing, but there's no past due, current, upcoming. There's just a review date and then priorities. And then the actual sprint board can be built off of that backlog. So the backlog and the board are hand in hand, but they're the actual views. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So what I think I'm suffering from here is the fact that I don't understand the difference between an injected store versus a depend a bit versus a constructor injection store. Like, am I getting a new instance? I mean, clearly not, because if I change, so this store is backing this data, and I go in here and say, let's say, make progress adding request, it reset. That's interesting. Make progress, make more progress. If I tab out now, that will update. That's actually gone to the server saved, but also committed to the store, patched the state of the store, and updated. So these two stores, even though they're connected to different controls, because that panel down the side is this one, right? And the panel down the left is this one. Read-only store. I don't think that makes a difference. Don't think that has any difference whatsoever. It doesn't work for this, but that might be just a control problem. Right? If I update them, they don't change. Don't you need to register them and pick your scope there? This is a new keyword in Angular, a new piece in Angular, or in Signal stores. So I'm using NGRX, and I'm using their signals stuff, which is in developer preview, because it uses actual Angular signals to translate, to inform state changes. This documentation does not give you all you need either. You kind of got to wing some things and figure it out. I keep meaning to watch a few videos, but the intention is that this store is the same store that I get everywhere else. In the module, at least. Nothing should be standalone, I don't think. Standalone would be bad at this point. Very bad. Yeah, nothing's standalone. They're all in the module. So I don't think I have to do any extra registration. I think, because again, this one could just be an event that I'm not triggering properly. This and this are disconnected components with the same store, and you can see the immediate change. That is a patch. That's not the server updating anything there. So patching definitely works. So add requirements. If I go to the write feature and I go, see, I don't. Oh, this stuff makes my brain. The problem I have with this sort of stuff is this is the stuff that will stop me from progressing, and I'll get bored of, because I won't understand what am I actually trying to find. If it's on the server side, when it's events, when it's Kafka or Service Bus or even Mediator, I know what I'm doing enough to understand, oh, this is the behavior that's missing. On the client side, there's so many different moving parts, and I get why I'm doing it this way. I get that having the single store does give me a disconnect between the actual data on the screen and the services that back that data, so that I have this temporary state in between. It does allow me to disconnect. It does allow me to test eventually, and it gives me a lot of flexibility, especially in terms of updating the screens, right? Because I can update the data in one place and I have everything that's touching that data update immediately. But it is, I don't know. I see the behavior in one place, but then I don't see it in another. So why is that? So let's go and look and see if we get. So if I pick one that I've already got a requirement on, so I go here and I say new requirements, dialog closes when complete. This will complete and show me the panel to the right. So if I go to requirements here, I should have two requirements, right? Yeah, I have 0 and I have 1, right? So this new one is not. It's not a requirement, though. Is that part of the problem? I cast it as a requirement, but it's not a requirement. But it clearly doesn't patch. That's the problem. When I do, so the patching the state is literally saying, okay, go and push in the differences or update this object in the store. So in this case, I update build changes for item. I actually have this method to give me the changes object as it stands, so I can determine what exactly I'm changing in the store. And this works perfectly. Now this is not necessarily correct, because I can patch in the wrong state. Yeah, because what happens is when I go into when I click on the item, I actually go and call load detail, and load detail goes and executes a call to the GraphQL API and fetches. Well, the GraphQL API could be out of time, right? It could be behind because it's the view database. So I don't always want to do that. So one of my ideas is that I will push down to the client, oh, by the way, this object changed, so that I can decide whether I want to load the object. Right. So here, if not current or current has pending updates. So if I've marked it as pending updates, then this will load all the object data. Otherwise, it will just pull the additional data that I've set. I probably want to scrap that and just go with this pending updates. But I'm not calling load detail for right this second. So I should see it appear and then disappear when I click back and forth on it. That's challenge number 1 and 2. So the inject is done the same way. So basically the first one that calls that is going to establish a store, and then everything else is going to get the same store. That allows me to have consistency. I can build screens just purely off stores if I want to. I don't actually have to have any queries or service calls. Interesting that I don't see that message. So again, if I go back here, about there, that's working. The date isn't actually triggering that's a problem. Ruby's Cube, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome in. Dislike getting stuck in this way because it's frustrating, and I don't know. Like, if I can figure out what it is that I want to ask, maybe an AI question will go here. But the problem with this is I'm using, and this is another challenge when you're trying to use AI for stuff. I'm using bleeding edge components, so their knowledge of this, because there's not a lot of information out there about this, is going to be not exactly where I want it to be. Right? I'm not going to necessarily easily find content on these things. So again, I'm adding a requirement. I call add requirement. This definitely waits because I've seen it hold. And then this happen afterwards. This is the right way to do that requirement. You don't create a new requirement because it's an interface. So I'm essentially casting it as that object type. When I go into the store, I have a requirement. I patch the store to say pending. I then call add requirement. I set the requirement ID equal to the resulting identifier. So again, that gives that tracked entity response gives me an actual ID on this object. I then go and find the current items, but I don't need that actually. Oh no, I do need that to know if the current entity store has requirements already. Because you're patching the state, you're not saying you need to know what's there before to patch it in. Otherwise, you end up with just resetting them every time. So again, this is basically, if it was set, then we're going to patch into its requirements. We're going to add in another element of this requirement. Otherwise, we're going to add in the array of requirements, so that we always have an array of requirements. And then we say, hey, store, update the entity with this ID. And we can see it works because when we load back again, we definitely get those requirements showing, right? It's not like they disappear forever. Once they've come through the system, they definitely are loading into the screen. Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. How are you doing? A bit late today. We're doing that work thing. Not bad, not bad. working my way through. Ah, well, I appreciate the log. Thank you. So review date doesn't trigger a change. Actually, I need to validate that. Post put. I'm basically going to get distracted now. So when I tab away from this, okay, I do get the update. That's wrong. Interesting. I just changed that to the 12th. Now it says the 12th. Why do I hit that twice? That's very interesting. Make more progress. Still says the 13th, so it doesn't take. Okay, so I've got a bug in that piece. Not good. So let's track them before I get too far away. I don't like to-dos. I'm not using space effectively, but let's use that. Liquid sky. Bug with review date update not applying. Bug with actual requirements not applying. So I think I like the design, right? I think the screen overall is working fine. Like, so eventually notes and attachments will live in here as well. I think I'm going to provide some icons to pull out into a full screen, and provide the ability to see a full screen version of this rather than just having this small version. But while I'm building the components out, this is especially useful, because navigating down here is okay, but we'll see. And also, I do think I see one line's point that kind of having the ability to navigate back and forth between these things. So in his example, right, he's adding a comment into this, and he wants the same comment into another thing. So he starts to add the comment, and then he goes over here and clicks, pastes the comment in, hits save, comes back to this one, hasn't hit save on this one because it's a pain, and adds a comment. I'm not sure if I would add comments the same way it had requirements, right? So I don't think it'd be a dialogue for a comment, because if that's the case, then that's a moot point. Also, I'm not sure if I want to make these commit saves. Maybe I do want to make these kind of update the store, but put the object into a dirty state to say it hasn't been saved. The challenge with doing that from a design perspective is, when do you save, right? Do you save on a timer? Do you save do you prompt the user to say, oh, by the way, you haven't saved, do you want to save this object now? Do you save when you navigate away and say, hey, by the way, you've got dirty changes on here? So immediate update is nice, but is it what I want? I don't know. Also, the associated projects aren't triggering update, I don't think. So let's have a look quickly at that one. Have we still got a breakpoint in there? No, we haven't. That's on the put, right? So if we change this, yeah, what event do we have available to us on that? Planning item detail component. So what I've done so far is they have on blur. Projects is on submit though, but I don't have. I'm not sure blur works very well for this, but we'll find out. Okay, that worked. Planning, ticketing. But there's the problem. That state load is going to kick me in the butt multiple times. So again, eventually they'll show. You see how the state's going weird now because they're like, that's created a very interesting bug. Let's see what happens when I load again. Yeah, so they got in a big mess there. So I do have to do something to mitigate the, oh, I know my state's different than the server. But wait until the server tells me that it's been updated. And that's the challenge with making this a that is the challenge with making this disconnected read writes, right? When I save something, it's not automatically available to read. So now that should actually work. Interesting, it jumps down. I don't know what creates that bug. It's as if I've patched the wrong object in. That one's working though, planning ticketing. It's just make more progress becomes challenging. It loads it, but it flips down. So I'm not sure why that happens. Interesting. Okay. So now this is the challenge of developing all this stuff. And again, I don't want to get stuck, but I can't afford to not clean this up and understand some of the challenges I'm facing and start to set more patterns in place. So ultimately, I need to make sure I understand how patching of the object works, putting the object into some form of dirty state so that I know that I don't have to make a server request, updating the client when an item that I care about has been changed. That's going to be the challenge, because I don't know who has what, right? Right now I'm basing my eventing on who cares about something. So if it's assigned to them or created by them, but that might not be the case, right? I might come in here and say, okay, well, anybody can make changes ultimately. Right. So who made a change? Well, that person, if I've opened up Make More Progress, but Jeffrey's got the actual item and it's assigned to them and created by them, but I allow other users to edit, then Jeffrey cares. So if Jeffrey's got that item, Jeffrey cares that item got updated, but I care. So do I need to track the list of entities that go down to a client? Do I need to track? Do I need to call all the clients and say, hey, by the way, an entity got updated? That seems really chatty, but I can't see any other way around that short of trying to track who knows about what and when from the server side. Maybe I need to make an event, a list that says, oh, by the way, here's the items I care about. And yeah. So I've got some horrible challenges ahead of me that I'm going to have to figure out, which is never going to be easy. But, we get there bit by bit, day by day. I'd also be interested if anyone's watching and has experience with some of this stuff, right? This is stuff that I want to learn more about. I want to do more of. And there's pieces in here that I just don't get how to do effectively on the client side. So I'm always open to other experiences here. But for right now, we're going to go and raid out because it is a work day. I have a day off next Wednesday. That is a federal holiday in the US. So I'll have a longer stream next Wednesday. So more dev. Game dev, I'll be back on Monday with that. But tomorrow I'll be back with this. I'm going to try and make some progress overnight. Yeah, we get Juneteenth. Yeah. Yeah. And then I have, so after 4th of July, I also have a full week booked after the 4th of July. So I have the 4th, the 5th, and then the solid week after that off. So longer streams coming that week. Maybe later streams as well, because then I can go in the pool and spend an hour or so swimming before I start a stream. I like early morning pool stuff. It's nice to just go out there when it's quiet and swim. So yeah, I've got some longer days coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to use some of those days to hopefully achieve more of this project stuff and get this done. The game dev stuff I love doing. I would do more of it. I would stream pretty much every day if I could, but I really want to make progress on this project, and I'm not going to do that if I put it off for game dev all the time. So yeah. So let's go and raid. I didn't do any shoutouts today. If you haven't, I can only do really one right now. Right. I'm going to shout the one out that is going to stream today. So one line will stream later on today, I hope, now having done that. But Thindle and Mr. Anhorn are also streamers, but I don't have any other shout out commands in my bot yet, so I need to fix that. So good morning, one line. Hope to see you again later on today, assuming I don't have any. Oh, I have a silly meeting to attend today. Yeah. We have a all hands platform meeting for 2 hours today, right at 12 o'clock. So I may see you, I may not see you. But anyway, have a great rest of your day all. Take care. Thank you very much for stopping by and hanging out. I appreciate it. I will be back on this tomorrow, and I'll see you again soon. Take care all. Have a great day.